Joining us now, Chairman of the National Governors Association, Republican Governor Larry Hogan of Maryland. His new book is officially out today, entitled Still Standing: Surviving Cancer, Riots, a Global Pandemic, and the Toxic Politics That Divide America. Great to have you on the show. So, Governor Hogan, let's start with the last part of your title, The Toxic Politics That Divide America. How would you describe what those are today?
Well, I've been very frustrated with the kind of the anger and divisiveness that we've seen, frankly, on both sides of the aisle. And I think a lot of people in America are just frustrated with the current debate and would like to see a more, civil discussion. And I think they're really more interested in trying to find a better politics where we can reach bipartisan common sense solutions to some of the serious problems that are facing the country.
Who do you think bears the most responsibility for that toxic culture over the last 3 or 4 years?
Well, look, I've been talking about this for 6 years, long before the current occupant of the White House. It was the main theme of my inauguration address in January of 2015. I think our politics has been heading in that direction really for quite some time, and over the past at least decade or two. And I think it's reached a fevered pitch. There's no question that today it's worse than it's ever been, and that it's gotten way off track.
I want to get to your book, but of course I have to ask you this question, or else I will hear for the rest of the day why I didn't ask you this question. And that is, doesn't Donald Trump bear the disproportionate responsibility, at least over the past 3.5 years, for the constant attacks against Republicans, Democrats, people in the media, calling people enemies of the press, Charlottesville? I could do the litany, the familiar litany. It continues even today.
Well, I've probably spoken up more than any other Republican in America about my frustrations with the president's language and his tone and the way he goes about tweeting and the things that he says. And it frustrates me. I've long given up trying to change his behavior. I talked about it during the campaign when he was running for president. I talked about it right after he became president. People said, what's the best advice you can give the president? I said, stop talking the way you're talking and stop tweeting. So, I'm not here just to criticize the president.
Well, of course, and it's not fair for Republicans that come on this show to have to defend the President of the United States in every single tweet, which is a mistake that I think we in the media make far too often. Let me ask you about your battle with cancer. Talk about, if you will, just for those that are struggling through it right now, talk about your low point and how you got through that.
Well, so this is something that it really touches so many different people in America. I think almost everyone has either been through it or has someone that they love that's gone through a struggle like this. I had just been governor for 5 months. I'd won the biggest upset in America and then had my first legislative session, then battled the riots in Baltimore in 2015, and 60 days later got hit with this very personal struggle that I wasn't expecting, with life-threatening cancer spread throughout my body. And I'll tell you, it was a very difficult struggle, but I met so many incredible patients going through much more difficult battles and met their families, and learned about the incredible doctors and about how important it is to have a support network. And I'm going to continue to work as hard as I can to work with different groups to raise awareness until we find a cure for some of these terrible diseases.
How did you facing death impact the way you looked at life?
It really did make me think about the important things in life. It makes me appreciate every single day, and I try to make the most out of every day. I think it probably made me more empathetic to the struggles that people go through, and I'll tell you, I'm not afraid of taking a tough political stand. Going through cancer and chemotherapy, somebody tweeting or saying something that disagrees with you isn't all that scary.
Governor Hogan, it's Willie Geist. Congratulations on the book. Now that it's officially out, we've been able to comb through some more of it beyond the excerpts we had in the last couple of weeks. And one of the stunning passages is when you write that in 2019, you were approached not just by Republicans across the country to run for president, but by President Trump's cabinet secretaries So in other words, the people who worked for Donald Trump and worked with Donald Trump approached you and said, you ought to run and primary our boss. Can you say more about who they were and what their message was to you?
Well, I could, but I probably won't. But it wasn't. I don't want to give the wrong impression. It was a passing reference about I was surprised that this happened, but it wasn't the whole cabinet coming to me begging me to run. It was a passing conversation about a couple of folks saying that hey, we can't tell you how important it is that you're speaking up and you're saying the things that you're saying, and it's important to the party and the country, and we sure wish that you would consider this. That's all. But I don't want to get into detail about personal conversations that were off the record, but I thought it was important just to throw that out there to say that there were other people that maybe weren't speaking out that were concerned about some of the things that were going on.
What were their concerns? What did they relay to you? And they were sitting cabinet secretaries?
Yes, there were a couple of cabinet secretaries, but I'm not going to get into the specifics of that, as I didn't get into in the book.
Okay, let me ask you, Governor, about what's happening in your state right now. Yesterday, President Trump was in North Carolina saying a lot of these governors need to open up their states. It's time to open. He's talking about companies that need to get their people back to work. He's talking about schools. As you know, he wants schools open across the country coming up in the next few weeks just in your state. Do you feel like Maryland is ready to open in the way that Donald Trump believes it should?
Well, look, right now, I think we're seeing at least 22 states that had opened that are now reshutting because the virus is growing out of control. In our state, we've been following the advice of the public health doctors and the scientists, and we've gone about a safe, gradual and effective reopening based on that in a very careful way. We've got a lot of our economy back on track and people back to work, but with very important restrictions and safety measures and precautions and capacity restrictions and masking. And so, our state is in a different shape than many of the others across the country. But this kind of goes against the president's messaging. He's been changing his message over the past week or so to take the virus more seriously and to start finally talking about the importance of masking. Many of the Republican governors are now reshutting things in their states in the South. And then the president kind of stepped on his own message by saying, again, we need to reopen. It reminds me of when his entire coronavirus task force and all the cabinet secretaries were saying we had to take action to stop the virus, and then the president was tweeting, liberate and open up. They've got to get on the same page. And the virus is getting really back to where it was in the early stages, and we need consistent messaging out of the White House.
More on the coronavirus, Governor. The Baltimore Sun is reporting about a Baltimore doctor who's been working on the front lines of this pandemic, who died from the virus on Saturday. 56-year-old Joseph Costa was chief of critical care at Mercy Medical Center. The Sun reports, quote, as he lay dying, about 20 colleagues held a vigil and placed their blue-gloved hands on him. His husband told the paper that, I keep thinking, now there's one less doctor to care for pandemic patients in Baltimore. The hospital says Costa came on board in 1997 and held several leadership roles over the years, including president of the medical staff. We are hearing, Governor Hogan, of staffing shortages, of frontline workers dying, just like this incredibly vital doctor who was working on the front lines. If you were president, would you have immediately gotten the Defense Production Act going and on testing and on other measures to help mitigate this pandemic?
Well, first of all, my heart goes out to the family and friends of this incredible doctor, and all of these frontline healthcare workers really are the heroes of this crisis, this pandemic. Every one of them deserves our undying thanks for being out there and risking their lives for the rest of us. But yes, I've said this, that one of the biggest mistakes was first not taking it seriously at the beginning, but also not developing a national testing strategy at the beginning. All the states were kind of on their own. We've tried to play catch up, but we're still kind of in a situation where we were early on. We now have 10-day waits for finding out where the virus is. We're starting to see the flare-ups again. And we're in our state, we built 6,000 new hospital beds and ramped up capacity, and we've been able to tamp down the virus. Our positivity rate is declining. We're so far keeping it under control, but this thing is coming back around, and it's traveling from other states. And if we had gotten it under control earlier, we might not be in this position right now. And we have a call today with the White House, again, with all the governors, and we're going to again push for more funding, not less funding, and possibly utilizing the Defense Production Act to try to help these private labs get up to speed and catch up, because we're behind the 8 ball.
Well, let us know if it happens, especially on the Defense Production Act. Thank you very much. The new book is entitled Still Standing: Surviving Cancer, Riots, a Global Pandemic, and the Toxic Politics That Divide America. It's out today. Governor Larry Hogan, thank you very much for being on the show this morning.